So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted that we have with us Zandra Moore, who's CEO at Panintelligence. So firstly, Zandra, thank you for sparing the time to talk to us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Panintelligence, and how you help people, that would be a great way to start.
Thanks, Chris. Pleasure to be on this, and thank you. We've got a brilliant northern business called Panintelligence. I'm the CEO and co-founder, Zandra Moore. What we do here is data analytics. We're a software business. How we help people is predominantly helping users of applications and software get better access to their data. So we are essentially the in-app analytics that you might be using in a software platform that you your business in, which could be a finance application, a CRM system, a field service system. So whatever you are using, there's an inside that platform, there will be an engine that's helping you to consume that data and provide things like visual insights or machine learning. So mostly our customers are software businesses. So we predominantly sell to other software businesses that have built exciting tech, and we become their kind of embedded analytics and data visualization engine, a bit techie and a bit nerdy, really. So we're a global business. We have customers all over the world, accelerating our international expansion in North America at the moment. But again, we have customers in all the corners except for Antarctica at the moment. So yeah, we're very much an international business and all based out of Yorkshire and Leeds.
Fantastic, great to hear, wonderful. And in many moves away, I did have a techie background, so I couldn't even converse with you right now, but I'm really interested. We had lots of fun with data ourselves at the time. So maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into business and why this particular one.
Yeah, no, I often talk about my role model, which was my mum, and I think generally speaking, sort of tech CEOs, and being a woman, I'm relatively unusual, especially data and tech as combined. And that's because I had the benefit of an amazing role model at home. My mum was one of the early women in tech in Yorkshire. She was involved in some of those early startups, and Planet Online, the first internet service provider here, to yes, in technology, providing sort of cloud and storage and infrastructure services, Energis, digital equipment corporation. So she was, we always had a computer at home before anybody else did. And she was very much involved in that kind of tech sector, very much one of the few women in a man's world. So I always just felt it's a space I wanted to be. I was brought up with that kind of inspirational role model at home. So I never thought tech wasn't anything else other than a place I would want to be in. So I kind of grew up wanting to be my mum. So that really helps. But I think very unusual for that to be the case. So still, we only have 17% of the working group in tech are women. So, and actually at the senior leadership levels, 2 or 3%. So we're still kind of grossly sort of underrepresented. But to be honest with you, that's just another passion and hobby of mine, is trying to move the dial on getting better representation in the sector that I work in. So I sort of went into it because it's what I wanted to do, and I had a great role model. Why data analytics? Well, I've always worked in software. I had 2 children and found myself with my second child finding that trying to get the balance of a full-time director position and a small family, a young family. Both me and my husband work in tech, and one of us needed to make the decision to go part-time at the time. 6 months maternity leave. There was no shared parental leave at the time, so it was more common. My children are 16 and 14 now. For the male, for the husband, for the father to be the one to take that to stay on full time, and for me to take the part-time work. So I decided, in order to keep my hand in, because tech moves super fast, right? You don't want to be out of it for too long, was to set up as self-employed and be a consultant, so I could have that flexibility but keep my hand in. I've never been self-employed before. I'd always worked for other kind of growth tech companies, so I've been in that kind of high growth tech ecosystem, but never been like a founder. I'd always been a sort of employed member of the team, and found myself working with lots of early stage startups, and found one that I absolutely loved working with, which is the business I'm in now. Started working with the co-founder, Ken, and then we bought the IP from the company that he was part of, and we spun that out in 2014. And data analytics is amazing for me and him. We're both neurodiverse, so they call it these days. I'm just dyslexic, he's dyspraxic, but the point is we both consume insight visually and find the easier you make data and information consumable or visual, the more people can participate in decision making. So very natural for us to both end up really building a data insight business, making that sort of simple to consume. So unusual journey, I think, but benefit of having a role at home.
Yeah, wonderful. Right, yeah, clearly a very strong role model. And as you've grown the business, what are some of the sort of biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
So we did a management buyout. So the first thing was when you pick yourself from a larger group where you have all of those systems and policies and infrastructure around you when you're sort of building a piece of IP, and you buy that's not there. You've got to start a business from scratch, but you've still got customers and a product, right? So you've almost got the opposite problem. You're kind of trying to serve customers without actually a way to invoice them, and trying to take their money without a bank account. It can be quite difficult. So, it took us three months to get a bank account, actually, when we spun out separately, which meant that we were transacting things through, personal bank accounts, crazy, and not paying ourselves and all sorts of stuff. So just, that transition from coming out of a large organization and becoming a startup, actually already having customers and product was an interesting transition. Growing to a point where we needed fundraising or funds to actually accelerate our growth and transition into the business we wanted to be, and having never raised money before, that was quite a big challenge. I wasn't well networked into the investment ecosystem, and I had to kind of make that happen. But equally, there was a lot of very brilliant people that gave me a lot of support to help me navigate through that. And if it hadn't have been them building my confidence and helping me to see that I could go out and raise money, maybe I wouldn't have done so. That was an interesting transition, a lot of learning, very quick learning.
Yes.
And then in the last 3 years, well, it stretched all of us as leaders. I think navigating the pandemic, there's no leader I haven't spoken to that said that this is probably one of the hardest periods of their time as a business owner or leader, just dealing with that kind of hybrid working, remote working, and managing that kind of volatility of the markets. And, the change is inevitable now. We're used to just being an uncertain market. So I think just navigating that and feeling that you're sort of feeling your way through that almost month by month these days, as opposed to being able to put a plan together and be more confident that you could execute on that plan over an 18-month, 2-year period. I think people are sort of, if you can get a quarterly plan that you're confident in, that feels like a pretty good place to be. So that's interesting around kind of planning and forecasting, and just how much that's changed really in the last 5 years, I think. Huge.
It makes perfect sense. So we very much work on sort of 90-day business action planning and longer term goals. And because as you rightly say, where we're gonna be at the end of 90 days, who knows? Any plan that was written January, February 2020 was pretty much ripped up, I think, within a few weeks' time.
Well, I was. You asked a question about what was one of the biggest challenges. We brought investment in at the end of 2019, Series A funding, about 4.5 million. It was a big round of investment for a relatively small business. We had a whole new board, new chairman, new investors. We'd never met as a board. The pandemic hit and we were all at home trying to kind of build relationships remotely. And it was, never met as a board together. I've met everybody individually, but we'd never been as a board together. And that, that's a dynamic you need to establish really as a business. And, when you've not met face to face with everyone and networked and bonded as a group, and then you go into that boardroom virtually and say, by the way, guys, we're going to rip up this plan and start again. That was pretty challenging. And, we did, and we navigated that with their support. And, they were great, because we did say, look, this plan that you backed, 2/3 of that plan is not going to be delivered in the way that we thought it was because of the changes in the market. So we need to focus on this bit and this bit alone and double down on it. And they backed us, and we've worked through that. And now the business has transformed into something that is accelerating because of that decision that COVID kind of pushed us into, which actually I think has been really great for our business, probably accelerated things that we had to do, but maybe would have taken longer to do, if that makes sense. Forced the change and innovation to happen sooner because we had to survive. So, yeah.
Absolutely. It really did accelerate so many things, didn't it? And I recall actually when we were talking to people through COVID, is that one of my favourite quotes is from Charles Darwin, and it's something like, and I haven't spoken it for a while, but he says it's not the strongest or not the fastest of the species that survive, but the ones that are most adaptable to change. That was said a couple hundred years ago, and it was so relevant over the last few years. I think it's in case in point. And in business in general, what are some of the biggest learnings you've had about business, doing business, growing, and whether that's taking funding in or any other parts of what you
do? Gosh, it's just constant learning, isn't it? I mean, the one thing you realise is just how little you know. I think that's the you don't know what you don't know, and you increasingly realise how little you know. So I think that making sure making sure that you're working on the business as much as you're working in it, and trying to strike that balance and get it right is one of the hardest things to learn, and it's one of the lessons I keep having to remind myself of. Lifting yourself above it, scanning the horizon and the market, and tuning into what is going on, and that you're aligned to that, and that you're not sort of going off in the wrong direction or down the wrong rabbit holes. And we hear people saying that, but it can't be iterated too much just how important that is, and leaders creating space to kind of make sure that they are really aware of how macro and micro factors could impact their business, and not being blind to it. And just ask as many people as you possibly can, right? There are people that have really good insights in the market. And, I learn something from every conversation I have. Every conversation I have. And so I make a lot of time to be talking to the market as well as to my customers and to my team. Really? And I try and do it in third team, third customers, third the market, and keep to that discipline. If my diary is skewed one way, too much one way or the other, then I've probably got a kind of blinkered view of the business. So that's probably the biggest thing that I still trying to be disciplined around. And other than that, it's all companies are people businesses. I mean, a tech company is just a people business. And you can never be too tuned in to people. In fact, it always amazes me every time we do an ENPS survey, or we sit and do a focus group, just the things that we hear, we're like going, oh, crikey, of course. And why didn't we hear that or know that? And, the market for how people work has changed so much. And there are so many kind of rules of how we engage with our team that have sort of changed the last few years. That it's really, really important that we're listening all the time to what is working and what's not, because we can think things are working, and everyone's, oh yeah, remote working's great, and everyone wants to be at home, and the more we talk to people, there are groups it works for, but there's a lot of groups it doesn't, and you've got to find a mix that works for the majority, not the minority. And just because the people that perhaps have been in the business longer, are closest to the senior leadership team, tell you it works for them, it's probably because they're so tuned into the business and they already are well networked in and they understand it. They don't need to be in it. But the people that you're onboarding, the new starters, the junior members of staff that have not had people to learn from, that haven't got the benefit, they just need to be in more. And we've got to find a balance that works for different groups, and that's a big challenge for leaders right now. So that makes absolute sense. And I think your point about as a leader being able to work on it, and I think it's the idea of slowing down to speed up is one that I like. It's like, take your time. And it's really funny when I speak to business leaders, business owners on a regular basis, and say, just imagine you have more than enough time to sit and just think. And there's a look of shock and surprise on a face of, no, you've got to be going 100 miles an hour all the time. Well, if you're getting 100 miles an hour, vision is blurred, in my opinion, and it's being able to sprint where we need to, but be able to take that step back. I struggle with it massively, Chris. I struggle. Like, my first school report said, if Zandra slowed down a bit, she'd get more things right. And my mum marched into school and said, don't tell my daughter to slow down. She'll do 3 times as much as everybody else. And if she gets 80% of that right, she'll still be more productive than the rest of them. So it's a really, and yeah, she did. She really said, the world needs lots of different types of people, and actually you need people that are maybe don't need to get everything 100% right, happy to get it 80% right, but are more more productive, or maybe drive more. But you're right, and entrepreneurs tend to be a bit more like that. And sometimes, it gets nearer 60% than 80%, and we need to know that we still, we're not busy fools. And I think that is the really important thing, that you don't mistake kind of activity for productivity. And that's the difference and the challenge that we've got to, busy fools is no use to anybody. So that's a big challenge.
Completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's, as you say, many people, and I'd suggest most people, do struggle, going too fast, because they really do get a lot less than 80% right. And I'm guessing I might know the answer to this question, given what you said earlier, but we're a coaching organisation, as you probably know. I'm keen to know who the best coach you've had, whether that's in business, sports, life in general.
Gosh, it's a good question. So I would say that it's changed over different stages of my career in life. I would say my mum was probably my mentor and role model at a younger age. She's still a kind of mentor now, right? I still go to her and we talk about stuff. So she's been, foundational, I think. Today, my mentors and coaches are my peers. So other founders of tech companies on the similar stage that I'm at. And increasingly female founders, which is great, because previous to that, there was less so. So it's quite nice to sort of build a group of female founders that I can have a network with. And that's been huge, valuable, like a circle of, it's almost like having your own alternative board of peers, right? That you kind of co-mentor each other through challenges, because one of you is likely to have been there. So I'd say in the last 2 or 3 years, and especially in lockdown, what happened was we all sort of reached out to each other going, what are you doing? And this is a nightmare, and this is really hard. So we built these kind of bonds through lockdown, and because we could just jump on a call with each other on a night after the end of our sort of day, you just grab a glass of wine and sit there and kind of go, oh God, how are you coping? And it just created these really informal kind of networks and bonds. But prior to that, I would say, there's a real mix of managers I've had, or more formal coaches, a real mix. But what the main thing is, you do need different people at different stages. It's knowing when perhaps the people that you're working with, that's come to a natural. Sometimes you have to let the people go and move on to other people that will actually be good for you. And knowing when that time is right is the hard bit, I think.
I think it is, isn't it? Because any sort of coaching mentoring relationship is quite personal. So there is naturally, often over time, a liking going on. So it's almost like stopping having a friend. So but it's got to be fit for purpose, whatever that support is. It's really, really important. And through your career, are there any favourite quotes or sayings that you find yourself using or falling back on in difficult times or otherwise?
Yeah, I've got all sorts. Really.
Oh, great.
So I've got a few of my favorites that I always say, but I use them all the time. So growth begins at the edge of your comfort zone. I'm a big believer in, if something's not feeling you a little bit, make it feeling a little bit uncomfortable, you're probably too comfortable. And that means you're probably not growing. And actually, you should get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, because that's how you grow as a leader and how you grow as a business and how you grow as an individual. And I try and really instill that. And the only way you can build a culture on that premise is if you make it a safe culture. So people need to feel safe to fail and fail fast. So if you're happy with 80%, then people have got to feel okay with failing 20% of the time. So you've got to make sure that people do not feel that they can't fail safely. So as long as you create a culture of fail safe, then actually you're likely to increase your productivity and velocity, because they're more likely to take risks, and actually they're more likely to personally grow and feel valued, feel valuable, and feel that they're actually stretching themselves. So that's a really big one for me, and trying to foster that in a culture is critical to what we do here. Outside of that, I've got Shy Ben's Getting Out, which is a lovely northern one, which is, I think people need to, there's a perception that of hierarchies, and my experience as a CEO is everyone's just a human. And actually, if you go and ask someone for help, most of the time they're going to say yes. So don't just look at a job title and think you can't have a conversation with them. Some of the most amazing people that I've been inspired by have been the graduates or the people that have sought me out at an event and come stood in front of me and gone, I want to work for you, or I want to know what you do with this. And I've been like, do you know what? Amazing. Yes, I'll give you a job. So just don't think that you can't. So do ask. If you don't know, if you don't ask, really. And then the last one is givers gain, which is, I'm a big believer in, pay it forward and it will pay back. So go out there, give a bit of your time, give a bit of your support, peer mentor, coach, advise, do what you can as part of that talking out. So if you're asking the market for what's going on, do that by giving back to the market. And guess what? The market will keep giving back to you, and it becomes its own kind of energy. So I find that don't expect short-term returns for some of the time and things you give out there, but it always pays back, and it tends to pay back way more than you put in. It just might take a bit longer than you anticipate. And that's the networking effect that I think if leaders get that, and they get that if you go out there and just go out and give your time and support, speak at events, be present, be visible, be a role model, share your knowledge, share your insights, people will start to walk towards you because you will become an influencer and a leader out in the market, and that will draw the market towards you, which is very valuable. And do you know what? It's cheaper than paying an agency for branding.
A
lot cheaper.
Let's not go there. I've interviewed a few, so let's not go there. A very similar one that I picked up a long time ago that served me, which is on the lines, which is the more I serve, the more I deserve. And I think it's that, you know, it's, as you say, it's you start with service and everything sort of comes back from there, giving before you gain. So makes perfect sense. And I'm really interested to know what you feel you've learned about yourself as you've developed your career.
I have permanent imposter syndrome, but I think most leaders do. And that's not a gender thing either.
No,
it really isn't. It's just not. I mean, it gets associated with gender, but I actually think it's really normal for all leaders to feel it. So
100%. At least 60% of the leaders I've interviewed with this would probably say that. I'm pretty sure. It's certainly a high number, and you know, both genders. Yeah,
and I think so. What I've learned is I have to be comfortable with that all the time, and that's okay, and that's normal, and not to feel that that's something that's holding me back. So I've learned that it is okay to feel that way, and it's normal to feel that way, and actually it may never actually go away, and that the more we talk as leaders about the fact that we feel that way, the more we make it okay for other people to feel they can be in our shoes. So what I've learned is that is just a reality. It's something we need to live with and accept, but it's, I think, something we should talk about a bit more. And what else I've learned about myself is, do you know what? I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was, which is a nice feeling. And I love the fact that every time I stretch myself, I kind of lean into something and go, do you know what? Maybe this felt hard, but it's amazing what you're capable of if you just, we put our own barriers up, right, about what we are or not capable of. And sometimes we just need to have a go, be scared and see how it feels. And then suddenly it becomes normal. I always liken it to driving a car. And the first time I kangarooed my car off, and I felt like I'm never going to be able to drive this car. It was too complicated. Press this, pull that, look in here. It felt so complicated and so confusing. And now I can't even remember how I get to work on a morning. I mean, I don't even think about the journey, never mind what I'm doing with the car. So it's become such muscle memory that we don't actually think about it. And it just takes time for those things to become something we know, and we just got to accept that's the journey and the process, really.
Yes, and being conscious, or conscious being unconsciously competent, I guess, but it is like we're building all these capabilities. It's interesting you said about the imposter syndrome. As I say, that at least half the people I've talked to on this have talked about that, and what makes me feel like is, as you say, it's okay to be like that. And probably if I'm in a room of peers, most of them are thinking that, so it's okay. It's like, it's really okay, isn't it? And, but yeah, it's a challenge for many of us on a regular basis. So looking forward, what does the future look like for you guys, and what are the main challenges you face, if any?
World domination. We want to totally. We want to be a global leader in our category, and we want to be known and found first. It's that simple. I want to build a materially significant business in the region that employs hundreds of people and is one of the flagship brands and high growth businesses that people go, hey, they talk about Skybet, they talk about, TransUnion or whatever, Flutter, and all these brands that people talk about, and they talk about Panintelligence. And I want to be a female leader that's done that, because we need to see more women going through that whole high growth stage and exiting a business for hundreds of millions of pounds, not a few million, for other women to believe that they can. So super passionate about that. And then we can, because we have a global opportunity in our business. So that's what I want. That's
wonderful.
what I want.
And I've no doubt you're going to make it. So that's absolutely wonderful. In fact, it'd be great to probably swing by in 12 months' time and just get the next instalment of where you are. That would be wonderful.
It would be a pleasure, Chris.
Oh, no, it really well. Thank you. It would be for me too. And what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going to business right now?
And I don't know if this is the right phrase, but I think procrastination is the killer of all great ideas, because if you don't do it, someone else will.
Yes.
And, you know, you just have to, you're never going to get it all right. And don't try and build a really complex business plan, because guess what? It's going to be out of date in 90 days. We just talked about that. It's all about JFDI. You know, if you've got an idea, just have a go, take a risk. You can always go back to what you did before, whether it's a day job or something else. But if there's something you're really excited about, don't procrastinate. That time is the killer of great ideas. Just do something quickly. Don't try and do it perfectly. 80-20 rule. Do as much as you can to move yourself along. Be productive. That's the focus for people. And it's so easy for us to sit on an idea and think we've got to come up with the logos and the branding and then a business plan and all this other stuff, and that we do all the spreadsheets, but all we're doing is delaying the doing. Actually, the best thing you can do is go out and have the conversations and start doing the doing, build the thing, talk to people, tell people about what you're doing. That's actually the things you should be doing, not the spreadsheet or the logo design and a business plan on your own in a room. Get out there and do you know what? When you start to tell people about it, it becomes real. And when you start to do that, that's when things happen, not when you do it on isolation.
No, brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. And if you were to start again, is there anything you, looking back, you might do differently?
I love the journey I've been on. I'd do it again. Not that I haven't got lots of things wrong, I have, but I think I've learned so much and grown so much through the things that I've got wrong. That's made me the person I am, and I think that makes me a better leader, and I think that makes me, I think, just normal as well. So going back and doing everything right, actually, I think I wouldn't be the same person. I actually quite like who I am today. So I don't know, would I do anything different? No, because I think all of those things, right and wrong, that I've done have brought me to where I am today, and I think it's a really positive place. So no, I would just do the same journey.
Brilliant. No, I feel, I feel the same. I think it's we learn from our mistakes, and therefore if we'd have done things differently, we may be in a different place. And whether that's better or worse, who knows? But it's not the place you go. In fact, it's interesting. Our founder, Brad Sugars, is a very, very successful guy. I remember him telling me a long time ago that he felt he was as successful as he was because he'd made more mistakes than anybody else he knew, not despite, but 100%. Because. And I think
most entrepreneurs have failed several times before they have a success, right? And that's just the truth. And the more we can help people to feel, most of us are scared. Most of us don't get it right first time. Failure is a positive thing. The worst thing you can do is not do anything. So, those are the things that we're going to keep helping people to hear. Because I think if we can breed that culture into our economy and society, into our people and the people that come into organizations, then we've got a better chance of, increasing the productivity in a country that really desperately needs it. And we know that. And we've got incredible business here. We've got incredible, foundations for a very, very successful economy. We've just got to give it a little bit of a supercharge. And I think we can do that with people's mindsets.
Brilliant. Wonderful. I'm certainly in on this. This is wonderful. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so?
Gosh, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. Advice I'd give an 18-year-old me, I'd definitely tell her not to date a few of the guys that dated. But I would, do you know what? Sometimes I wish I'd kept the books and the things that I'd learned in my degree, because do you know what? I keep going back to it, and it means so much more today than it did when I learned it. The problem with the university education is you sort of end up doing it the wrong way round. Yep. And in a way, I would love to read my stuff now I learned then and remind myself of those really useful, I'm sure, lessons that didn't mean enough at the time. So, but that's not an advice for an 18-year-old. It's just, I wish I'd kept it. Like, don't throw it away. Your 40-year-old self might be quite interested. You might not be now, but your 40-year-old self might.
It's funny to say that I'm actually in the middle of moving, and I'm clearing out lots of my daughter's things, and it's sort of I'm keeping a lot because it's just like I have a feeling she never want, or either would never want to look at them, but you never know, and
You never know.
some things are quite nice mementos. But well, Sandra, thank you so much. That's been really fascinating and inspiring, and I've no doubt whatsoever that you're going to achieve the goals that you're setting for yourself. If anybody's watching this would like to get in touch with you or Panintelligence, what would be the easiest way to do so?
So I love LinkedIn. I absolutely adore it. It's an amazing way to connect with people. And so if you just reach out to me on LinkedIn, Zandra Moore with a Z, so that's nice and easy to find. If you send me say I listened to the podcast, just let me know that that's how you found me, and I'll reply to you. I reply to everybody that comes to me that tells me how they've sort of reached out to me, especially if it's through something like a podcast. And if there's, a reason for us to get together and have a quick call, like I say, I learn from every conversation. So please do reach out. Happy to chat.
Brilliant. Well, as I said earlier, it would be great to swing by in 9-12 months to just see where you are and what's going on next, if that's okay. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure, Chris. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.